Glitch? Paranormal. It was my son, but wasn't? By U/ alias aka 007. Last week, my 10-year-old son, let's call him B, got sick one night. He was vomiting, had fever, and etc. So the next morning I kept him home from school. I accidentally forgot to call the attendance line and report him absent. About half an hour after school started that morning, my fiancé called me from work, freaking out asking where B was. I informed him that he was homesick, which my fiancé didn't know because he had left super early that morning for work. Apparently, the school had been frantically calling me, but my phone never rang and I had no missed calls. And then called my fiancé because numerous students and teachers had seen B at breakfast. These are served before school starts, and B is always there early for breakfast. But he was absent from class when school began. Many students swore that they had seen B at breakfast, but B was acting weird and didn't respond to them. Very odd because he is very outgoing and social. It even escalated that some students had seen B running onto the stage in the auditorium and hiding. Teachers were literally using flashlights to search even up in the stage rafters for him because he had supposedly even been spotted up there. One of his best friends even called B from school that morning because she was worried, and B's phone never rang. She even texted him also, and yeah, you guessed it, no text was received. The police had been notified and were en route to the school until my fiancé called me, and I called the school immediately to inform them that B was homesick. I have tried to obtain more details about all of this, but even the school secretary seemed weirded out about it and was just like, okay. Well, I'm glad he's okay. Must have been another student that looks like him. From the info that I have gathered, nobody actually spoke to B that morning because he apparently ignored all of them and just stared down at his food tray. When asked about what he was wearing, all I got was a hoodie and sweatpants, which is his usual everyday attire. Bottom line is, this whole thing really freaked me out, his friends, and even his teachers. Please help. Does anybody have any idea what happened? I can find no explanation for how my broken mala repaired itself. By U/no_manager 342. I really can't find no explanation for this. About 2 months ago, I was going to meditate and decided to use my green sandalwood beaded mala. When I pulled it out of its drawstring bag, I was terribly disappointed to find that the elastic it was strung on had deteriorated. It was loose, floppy, and made crunchy noises when the elastic was expanded due to the apparent dry rot. The beads had large gaps of twisted elastic in places, so I decided not to meditate with it at that time. I put it back in the drawstring pouch with intentions of restringing it on nylon cord at a later date. In the meantime, I considered purchasing a new mala made of gemstone. It turned out to be cheaper for me to order the gemstone beads and string it myself. And this was better for me as well because I didn't want another one strung on elastic, which all the malas I looked at were. So I ordered the gemstone beads that I wanted. The green sandalwood mala, well, I tucked it safely away in a cabinet until I had time to redo it. I received the gemstone beads last week, so today I strung my new mala. It turned out well, so I decided since I was on a roll to restring the broken one. I went and retrieved the pouch from the cabinet, and then totally had my mind blown when I took out the old mala, and it was in perfect condition. I just stared at it. It was impossible, wasn't it? I've never seen reverse entropy before. The elastic was tight, no gaps, no twisting, no dry rot. It stretches easily and then pops right back into perfect shape. And I honestly cannot think of one reasonable explanation. One curious coincidence is that at that time, I found the mala twisted, dry rotted and falling apart, and I was experiencing pretty severe chest pains. I had been having them for about a week, and I kept telling myself that it was nothing, and I refused to go to the hospital. Then shortly thereafter, they suddenly disappeared overnight. I haven't had a chest pain since. However, now I find things are different. In addition to the mysteriously regenerated mala, I also discovered last week that a popular sportswear brand that I remember from years ago is now spelled ADIDAS. I distinctly remember it being ADDIDAS. I was trying to find a certain pair of shoes, and Google kept giving me that strange alternate spelling. So, are these glitches, quantum immortality, or something else? Has anyone else ever experienced something broken and trashed out, and suddenly being new again with no logical explanation? I saw an old friend working at my local store, but she lives 2 states away. By u/Cardi_BS_shoe. The night before, my friend and I went out, and at a diner, she brought up that she noticed that I was mutual friends with one of her friends. Let's call her L. I hadn't thought of L in years, and we talked about old memories, and that was that. The day of the event. After shopping, I made my way to the self-checkout. There was a girl standing there directing customers who looked exactly like Elle. There was this moment between her and I where we looked at one another as if we recognized one another, and I thought for sure it was her. I didn't say anything because I'm weird about small talk, and I didn't want to put myself through all of that. Anyways, I start checking out, and she's still standing there behind me and says to her coworker that walked up, "I never know what to do when I see someone I know in public." In that moment, I got the courage to turn around and find out if it was really her and say something. But she was in a conversation. I realized that I never looked at her name tag to confirm, and it had Elle's full name. The same name as my old friend. So then I was like, okay, this is her. What a coincidence. I finished bagging up my things. I was gonna talk to her, but in that minute or less, she disappeared. I texted my friend from the previous night because I thought that it was such a funny coincidence that we were just talking about her. But she told me that it's impossible because Elle lives 2 states away. And ever since then, I felt kinda weird about it. Me and my roommates have been losing things, and I'm starting to question our sanity. There are a few things that have been happening, and on their own, they seem weird, but combined, I feel really paranoid, and honestly, I have no idea how any of this could have happened. I feel like I just have to write them all down. So, a week ago, me and roommate B bought some weed, and we put ours in our separate rooms. Roommate A witnessed him putting it into his room while nobody saw me putting it into my cabinet. I vividly remember putting it there, and I went to sleep right after. The next morning, all of it is gone. We looked everywhere, but they were nowhere to be found. We were both completely sober that evening, and there's no way that someone could have smoked all of it. I don't really use much anyway, and I really questioned my sanity that day. But today has been the weirdest day yet. First, things have gone missing from roommate A's locked box, where only he knows the key. And the night before, he and roommate B saw him putting the things inside the box. So, in the span of a few hours, in the morning, it was gone. Roommate B has bought a 10-pack of toilet paper, and we still have the packaging and it says 10. But somehow, there are only 8 left. No way we used 2 rolls in the span of a few hours. Also, roommate B forgot his wallet, so roommate A left him cash, a debit card, and a payback card, and another card. He saw him putting it on his nightstand. But hours later, the debit card and the payback card were gone, where nobody could have taken it, and why wouldn't they have taken the cash? Then, roommate A found his toothbrush wet, so he asked me if I had used it, which I am sure that I hadn't, since I hadn't brushed my teeth since this morning. So, how could it have been wet still? Even if I had accidentally used his, which is in a completely different location. I don't get it. I don't think it's from a carbon monoxide leak, because we don't have gas. And also, it couldn't have been us forgetting things because of weed or something, because all of those times that these things happened, we were definitely all sober. We have 2 entrances to our apartment, the one leading directly to my room being a normal room door and not an apartment door. And out of habit, I leave it unlocked, because until a week and a half ago, when new neighbors moved in, the only other people to live in our house was our landlord and his wife. My personal "What just happened here?" moment by u/Tepic01. So, this happened a long time ago, around the late 80s. It was the summer before my senior year in high school, and my sister was visiting my grandmother, and it was just my mom and myself at home. About 1 a.m., the phone rings. Woke both of us up because getting a middle of the night call then just wasn't normal. My mom answers, and her face instantly showing a bunch of worry and shock and also concern. She hangs up, turns to me, tells me that my stepfather had called and to get into the car and we have to go pick him up. He'd gone out earlier that night with a friend of his. We go to the friend's house, and it's a little bit out into the country. No cars in the driveway, but the front door is open. Both of the friend's dogs are just laying down in the living room. The porch light and all the lights in the house are turned on. We walk through the house calling for them and get no answer. And also, the dogs pay us no mind. We're only there for a couple of minutes when my stepfather pulls up in his van, It was one of those old Chevy cargo vans that had the spare tire mounted on the front. Tire is missing. Front of the van is crushed in more than a little, and he and his friend get out of the van and look at us in surprise and shock, trying to find out why we were even there. Turns out that they had been in an accident. They swerved to miss the deer and then hit a tree. The tire on the front probably saved their lives, and they were going to the friend's house to call my mom because it was the closest place to where they were, and they didn't feel safe enough to drive all the way to the hospital. Stepfather ended up with more than a dozen stitches going into his hairline from where his head had hit the steering wheel. It was the weirdest experience that I've ever had in my entire life. Between the phone call and the house all lit up but empty, and the dogs just chilling out in the living room, it makes the hair on my arm stand up, even now, so many years later. My Strange Experience Last Night by u/glitterfreshgore. I really doubt that this was a glitch in the Matrix situation, but it was such a strange experience that I wanted to share. Quick backstory. We live in the woods, and now that it's summer here, it gets really dark at night. You can't see the stars or moon or anything. And last night was rainy, so it was extra dark. I did a ton of yard work yesterday afternoon in a 90-degree weather, and I laid down for a nap while my husband made burgers on the grill. I slept right through dinner and the rest of the evening. I woke up about 12:30 a.m. and the house was quiet. My husband and kids had gone to bed, but I was so hungry after sleeping through dinner. I knew I wouldn't fall back asleep because I was too hungry. So I got up, went to the kitchen, and warmed up some leftovers. I just quietly ate while one of my cats kept me company. When I finished up, I cleaned after myself and decided to head back to my bedroom, brush my teeth, and get back in bed. I flipped off the kitchen light while simultaneously walking into my living room. I got 4 to 5 steps through my living room, and maybe my eyes hadn't adjusted yet, but I stopped in my tracks. It was just so dark, darker than I've ever experienced, if you could imagine that. There was absolutely no light, no sound, not even white noise. I put my hands out trying to feel for a wall or furniture to orient myself. For the record, I've lived here for 3 years, and it's my house, and I know it like the back of my hand. I couldn't feel anything, and in that second, I was struck with such a feeling of pure dread. It's what I imagined, what one of those sensory deprivation pods feel like. I couldn't see anything, hear anything, or physically feel any objects. I can't describe the darkness. It's just so dark. I panicked and called for my husband. We can control lights and other electronics from our phones, and I had left mine in the bedroom. But he didn't hear me. He was on the other side of the house in the AC, and I had shut the door behind me. I stood there, and I felt like I was in a void. The two things that stand out to me was just how dark it was, and the dread and fear I felt when I've walked through this house in the dark thousands of times before. I used to have insomnia pretty bad, and medication helped with that, so wandering around my home in the middle of the night is nothing new for me. The darkness, though, it wasn't even what I would call dark. It was more like nothingness, and I can't justify why I felt so afraid. After a few seconds, I was able to walk forward, but I was so disoriented. No drugs or alcohol, and I had been awake long enough to reheat and eat leftovers, clean up, and talk to my cat, so I was not dreaming or half asleep. I was very well rested actually, as I had slept maybe 6 hours prior. This was just so different and unsettling. I made it to a wall, slowly, and my living room is not huge, but it felt like it in the darkness. When I felt around, I found a light switch, and I was so relieved. I flipped it, and I was not at all where I should have been in my living room. I was leaving the kitchen, and I had taken maybe 5 steps on one direction before the dark stopped me. And I ended up at a different wall, not in the direction that I had been heading. Once the light was on, I left it on and was able to get back to my bedroom. It was such a strange experience. Sudden Daylight After Sundown by u/cutie992. July 2020, I took a spontaneous solo trip across Nevada. On July 5, 2020, I went to the Great Basin National Park. I climbed Wheeler Peak and watched the sunset, and I began the 4 to 6 hour descent back to my car after sundown. I was in the clearing after passing Stella Lake, and it was completely dark by this point. Relatively dark since there was a full moon. Also, retroactively learned that there was a lunar eclipse earlier that day. It had to be after 10 p.m. I was heading back to my car parked on Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive when 3 separate times for a few seconds, it went from black to daylight, then back to black. The first time this happened, I thought maybe my eyes were messed up from watching the sunset and I was just seeing spots or flashes. So I switched my flashlight off and began using a green glow stick instead because I thought my eyes had light damage. The glow stick along with the full moon was enough to see a few feet in front of me. But then, it happened again. The second time that I noticed that, I could see the ground all around me clear as day. The dirt, the shrubbery, everything was illuminated, and not with a green glow. It looked like natural light, and it was brighter than the moonlight. I got uneasy and started looking around for someone that was messing with me by pointing a flashlight at me or something. But nothing. But then back to pitch black. I picked up speed, becoming concerned that someone is watching me when I am alone in the mountains. But when it happened the third and final time, I actually looked all around me, and that's when I looked up and noticed that even the tops of the trees were illuminated and the sky was baby blue for a few seconds, and then back to black. I didn't know what to make of it, but I was no longer concerned that a human was watching me. Humans are scary as fuck when you're a female all alone in the mountains after dark. But nothing else happened the rest of the trail. I made it back to my car unscathed just before midnight and slept there overnight without any issues. I woke up just before 5 a.m. and then headed back home. I was not drinking or on any drugs. I was hydrated and I had ate while watching the sunset and felt rested. Nothing else out of the ordinary happened after that, but I've never been able to explain it. Has anyone else experienced something like this or have a possible explanation for it? I didn't identify a source, but there were never any long shadows, which tells me that the source remained high in the sky for the duration of the experience. It looked like natural light and no color tint to it. I didn't hear any noises at all any of the 3 times. Also, worth mentioning that it was a steady exposure. There was no flickering or fading. It went dark, bright, and then dark instantaneously. The Old Oak Swing. I just found out that there's a Reddit for this, and I thought that I'd post this story because I've literally been sitting on it for about 5 years now, not knowing what to make of it. A little backstory, if you will. My grandparents have lived in the same house since 1962, and actually still live there to this day. They have a big live oak tree out in their front yard. But now, here's the weird part. It had an old swing in it that I know for a fact that my grandpa had built, or at least that's what I was told as a kid. When I was a kid, I would lay in the hallway at their house and play with blocks and Barbies and many more. Well, they had this great big shelf at the end of the hall with knickknacks, pictures, candles, those sort of things. And on the bottom shelf were these old picture albums that I used to love looking at. It had their wedding pictures, old photos of my dad as a kid. But most specifically, there was a picture of my dad at about 2 years old sitting on my aunt's lap on that swing, and my uncle standing off to the side. My dad was born in 1963, so this picture would have been from like 1965. This is important. I love that picture. Anyways, I swung on that swing as a child, and I played with my cousins out on that swing. I even fell off this thing as a child and cut up my elbow pretty good. I go on to have my first child, and he loves playing on the swing too, so it was our little routine. We would go in and visit Grandma and Grandpa, and he could swing for a bit when we went to leave. One day, I show up to my grandparents to visit and notice that the swing is gone. No big deal, but I mentioned it to them when I got inside. I said, "What happened to the swing, Grandma?" And she answered, "What swing?" At this point, I'm laughing, like, hello, the swing from your front yard that's been there for like 60 years. My grandma is not laughing. She is seriously so confused, and I chalked it up to old age and move on. Then, I was talking to my dad a day or two later on the phone and told him that I thought Grandma's memory was going and told him about the swing situation. But then he answers me like, "What swing?" Now, I'm starting to think that these people are messing with me. I called up my cousin Faith, and she said the same thing. "What swing?" Then it dawns on me. The photo album. I'm about to have a photographic evidence to ruin their little joke. So I got to Grandma's and pull out the album that I knew the picture was in. Mind you, this thing has like an inch-thick layer of dust on it and doesn't look like anyone's touched it in 10 years. But the photo is gone. But the photo is freaking gone. My son, granted was around 3.5 years old, doesn't know what I'm talking about either, despite just playing on it like 4 or 5 days ago. Please, tell me I'm not going crazy and this is some glitch. But even if it's a glitch, it makes no sense. Something as small as an old wooden swing, like why? My oldest son is 8 now, so I've been thinking about this for like 5 years, with absolutely no valid explanation. A death That Could Have Been by u/Madsgirl. So, I'm not too sure if this would be a glitch, but I sure as hell don't have any other way to describe how or why this happened. So my best friend and I are driving down this windy road in our town that has a speed limit of 45 miles per hour. We have the windows down, music up, talking and laughing, all the usual things. And I believe we were on our way to a mutual friend's birthday party. On this one specific part of the road, there is a relatively sharp turn that bends around a guardrail. If you were to drive through the guardrail, you would plummet a great distance before hitting the shallow river below. Mind you, I have been on this road countless of times, and never had I ever been paranoid or imagined anything specific about this turn. It was just one place among the countless on this particular road that you had to slow down a good bit before continuing your way around. Anyway, we start to approach the turn, and while in the middle of a discussion about some drama going on at the party we were on our way to, we both grabbed the sides of our seats, and her one hand remaining on the steering wheel. We do this at the same exact time, in the middle of a conversation that had nothing to do with the road. We weren't speeding, no cars around us at all. It was just a peaceful drive, not unlike any that we had previously. We glance at each other with huge eyes and pull onto the side of the road after making it around the turn. After stopping, we immediately bring up the exact thing we both pictured in our heads at the same exact time. That she lost control of the wheel, which resulted in us smashing the guardrail and plummeting over the edge directly into the water. We both felt the same sensation of not being able to breathe correctly until we pulled the car onto the side of the road, and then felt a tingling sensation in the back of our heads, a weird buzz in our ears. It was, to say at least, extremely bizarre. I don't think that I'll ever be able to make any sense of this experience, and I was on edge the entire night after this. I would love to hear any ideas on how or why this occurred. My mom heard me sneeze when we were nowhere near each other by u/BeepBeep85. I was leaving a doctor's appointment and was stopped at a red light in my car at an intersection. I sneezed, and about 10 seconds later, my iPhone that was securely in the pocket on the thigh part of my yoga pants started ringing. It was my mom, and I answered it. Immediately, she said, "Bless you." I froze, and I started looking around thinking that by some coincidence she had seen me. That was the only logical explanation. But she lives 20 miles away from where my appointment was, and that was highly unlikely. I said, "What did you say?" thinking that maybe I imagined it, and she responded, "Did you just sneeze?" And I told her that I had, but it was several seconds before she called and my phone was locked in my pocket. She swears that she absolutely heard me sneeze, and I believe her because how could she have known? I didn't have an outgoing call to her, so it wasn't a pocket dial, and I have no logical explanation. She heard me sneeze from miles away, and 10 seconds after it actually happened. We've always been close and have had weird occurrences, like an eye twitch at the same time, and experiencing random heart palpitations that went on for some time before one of us brought it up and realized that it was happening to the both of us. But never anything like this that we absolutely could not explain or just attribute to coincidence. Does anyone have any insight on what could have taken place? A glitch in the Matrix? Or weird telepathic occurrence? Brother John by u/dayspring989. So about 4 years ago, my girlfriend, now wife, and I were having coffee outside of a Starbucks when a homeless man walked by us and was saying horrible things. It honestly sounded like he was possessed by a demon. Dude was talking about ritual sacrifice and stuff like that. Then, he just started vomiting everywhere. I thought, damn, dude is high out of his mind and probably has severe mental illnesses. So, a couple weeks later, I started working at that Starbucks. During my breaks, I got to know the homeless man who told me to call him Brother John. I'd give him cigarettes and food and try to talk to him. Some days, he was more coherent. In other days, he would freak out if I said anything to him. I figured he had some kind of psychosis or something similar. I remember most of our conversations as they were very significant to me at that time. Anyways, I left that job after a year or so. And this is where the glitch comes in. The guy just starts appearing everywhere I am. He lives behind a dumpster at a pet supermarket near my apartment, and I've been there with him. Obviously, he has no relationships with people because he can't really remember who people are. Many times I talked to him, and he introduced himself again. "Call me Brother John." Even when I would start the conversation off with, "Hey, Brother John." So, I left the job at Starbucks and figured that I wouldn't see John much anymore. Imagine my surprise when I am an hour away from my apartment at a park and boom, John is sitting on a bench babbling. For some reason, it felt completely normal. He probably took the bus down here for whatever reason. And I tried to say hello but got no response. A month later, I'm driving to my mom's house. My mom lives 45 minutes in the opposite direction of this park. Once I'm a couple minutes away from my mom's house, I see Brother John sitting on the curb in front of a used tire shop. Again, this seems completely normal to me for some reason. Another month or so passes, and I'm at church. My church is about 30 minutes in a different direction than both of the previous locations. And Brother John is having coffee at church, his clothes covered in bodily fluids. And again, I thought it was normal. Someone that goes to the same church decided to help him out a bit and bring him here. My church is tiny and has about 130 members. Maybe he took the bus, and either way, it's normal to me. This happened about 9 more times over the years. He was outside Barnes & Nobles, at the beach, at my college, outside of a soccer field I drove by, outside a Chinese restaurant, and many more. The thing that's got me fucked up is I never questioned it, even though these locations are massively far apart from each other. Some are around 90 minutes and in different countries. Most recently, he showed up at my job past the gated entrance. The gate is unlocked and anyone can open it, but it's out of the way. He talked to me like he remembered me and kept saying, "I belong here." and I replied in a calm way, but have to have him leave as it's private property. He stomped off angrily, saying, "I belong here." I haven't seen him since. The most reasonable explanation is that he just rides the bus everywhere. However, I've seen him at late hours of the night, far away from his dumpster camp. More than that, the chances of me running into him this many times is ridiculously low. I have many friends that live in my neighborhood, and I've only run into them in daily life once, if at all. The whole time writing this, I've been getting chills. It may sound like nothing, but I'm genuinely freaked out. Update. I just saw him again 4 hours after making this post. Color appearing seemingly out of nowhere by u/owlnormal8552. It was at the end of a workday, and as I commute by train, I took the local bus down to the train station. I was in a hurry as the bus was late that day, and it was only a few minutes or less before the train departed. Once aboard the train, I sat down to arrange my stuff. I noticed that my right hand was covered in a red color. My immediate thought was that I had cut myself and that the red color was blood. However, I did not feel any pain and was unable to find any wound on the hand. In addition, it did not really resemble blood, but was more like a chemical red dye. I seem to remember it had a slight chemical smell, like marking pens. As it was during the corona pandemic, I always had a bottle of alcohol-based disinfectant with me in my bag. Using this, I managed to get some of the red color off, but it was really hard, like it was some dye from a marking pen. I was bewildered, as I was unable to come up with any explanation as to where the red color came from. I take the same route back from work every single day, and something similar has never happened before. I did look at my clothes and bag to look for any spots of red, but I found none. How could I have accidentally come into contact with something that made my whole hand red without leaving any other mark? There was nothing in my office or the bus that I remember that could have caused anything like this. When I came home, it took quite a long time to wash my hand with soap and to get the rest of the color off, and some residues remained on my hand the next day. The next day, I inspected my office closely to see if a red marking pen, which I do have there, had leaked. But it hadn't. There were no red spots or markings anywhere. The event must have happened on the bus. But how? I almost forgot about this event until today. While I was in the bathroom this morning, I suddenly noticed a bright streak of red on the floor, coming from the big toe on one of my feet. My first thought was that it was blood, and that I had cut my toe or otherwise scratched myself until a drop of blood fell on the floor. However, I felt no pain and found no cut on the toe. Neither did I find any bleeding wound on my body. The underside of the big toe was, however, stained red. I looked thoroughly at the floor, but found no other red stains. When I tried to remove it with toilet paper soaked in water, it was resistant to be removed. Similar to a way a chemical red dye would, but not blood. Typically, blood stains having been in the air some time will form an edge of coagulated blood that is harder to remove than the rest. so that the outline of the bloodstain on a hard surface will remain after 1 or 2 wipes. This did not. It eventually left on a larger spot a very faint red color, similar to how a dye spot would do if one tries to remove it. There is nothing in the bathroom or vicinity that is a red-colored liquid. In both cases, the red dye, if that's what it is, seems to have come from nowhere. While there may be a trivial explanation, I am utterly unable to see any. Disappearing Bus Girl by I Love May Fee. In my last couple years of high school, I still rode the bus. I shared a seat with a girl and we got along fine and would usually talk the whole time. One day, and I'll never forget this, we were getting close to my house. My house is in a cul-de-sac, so the bus would let me out and it has to go to the back of the street and turn back around to get out. She mentions having to use the bathroom, and she asked me if she could use mine. I said it was fine, and she asked the bus driver too. It takes a few minutes for the bus to come back out of the dead end, so I figured she could be in and out in time to catch it. We got off the bus, and I distinctly remember her standing at the bottom of my porch. I headed in and asked my mom if she minded someone using our restroom. She said it was okay, so I went back out the door to tell her to come in. But she was gone. I remember seeing the bus go down the road and her waiting at my porch before I went inside. I was inside the house for 5 seconds, and when I got back out, she completely vanished. I remember the bus coming back from the dead end after she vanished, and I have no idea where she went to. In the split second that I go in my house to ask my mom and then back out, she vanished. I looked around and didn't see her. She was standing right by the bottom step when I went in. And I don't think she could have gotten back in the bus in such a short time, because I do remember seeing it drive up the road. Has anyone seen the grid in the sky? By Adalea. Okay, so this was about 2 years ago, not last summer, but the one before that. Me and my boyfriend, 24 to 25 at that time, went to visit his grandma in the countryside for a few days. One night, probably around 8 p.m., we went in the garden to relax and look at the fireflies that were starting to show up. The sun had set, but the sky was still a pale blue, not really dark yet. Grandma has a bed outside in the garden, used basically as a couch, so we decided to just lay there for a while. At one point, probably just a few minutes later, I noticed very clearly a pale white grid shape in the sky. Wondering what the hell I'm seeing, I start asking my boyfriend, "Do you see?" And he cuts me off and says, "The grid? Yeah." So, it's not like one influenced the other. We both clearly saw it. We joked around that the sky is fake and we are in a matrix and etc. We often have matrixy experiences, so it really wasn't anything shocking. But this has honestly been the cherry on top of everything else. I don't remember thinking of taking a picture. Or maybe we thought that it wouldn't be visible enough, and it's pointless to even try. I'm not really sure, but we just kind of accepted it and then shrugged it off, had dinner, and went to bed. 2 years later, I have never seen it again, and I've tried. We mention it now and again, like, "Hey, remember the grid?" "Yeah, I haven't seen it either," and etc. I love looking at the sky in general, clouds, shapes, colors, stars, whatever it may be, and yet I still never saw it again, not even a glimpse. I tried to find similar cases online, but for some reason, I only found people on drugs like psychedelics seeing grids and honeycomb shapes in the sky. But as said before, we were very much sober. Every time I remember it, I really don't know what to even think or how to feel. Why haven't I been able to see it again? What could it be? I've been theorizing if it's a force field, or maybe a projection of sorts, and the sky really isn't real, and that was just a glitch. I really don't know, but I hope someone sober has seen it as well, and can maybe shed some light. How Many Eggs? By U/Forston. Typical morning for me is my oldest, who's 13-year-old male, and I get up at 5 a.m. and start chores. At 5:30, I get a shower and get ready for work. He comes in at 5:45, and there's a window from the bathroom to the patio where we store out eggs. Today, at 5:45, I hear him on the patio, so I call out, asking how many eggs he gathered today. He replied, 23 chicken and 8 duck eggs. I go on about my morning routine, and 10 minutes later, he comes in covered in mud. One of the pigs got out, and he lost most of the eggs that he had gathered before he got to the patio because the pig had surprised him. I asked him, what about the one he had already put up? He said he didn't get around to putting up any. I told him that we'd talk when he was on the patio, but he said that he didn't make it to the patio until just now. I checked the security camera to make sure that he wasn't messing with me, and it showed no one on the patio when I had that conversation. He was in the yard wrangling the pig. He was able to salvage 5 chicken eggs and 2 duck eggs, but his count before the incident with the pig was 23 chicken eggs and 8 duck eggs. I Don't Have a Child by U/Drin21. This story happened last year. That afternoon, I was at the airport and ordered a taxi online to take me home. The taxi driver called me, and because the airport was so noisy, I walked to a quiet place so that I could hear his voice well. He picked me up in a car that had 3 rows of seats. I put my suitcase in the second row and sat beside the suitcase, and we chatted the whole drive. In the middle of the chat, he suddenly asked if my son was asleep because his voice was no longer heard. I thought I heard it wrong, so I didn't answer, and we talked about other things. When we arrived, I opened the door and got off with my suitcase and said goodbye to him. He asked me, "Where's your child?" I said that I have no children, and his face went pale. He immediately got down and checked the back seat, and indeed, there was no child there. He panicked and said when he called me that he heard a child's voice chattering faintly. I was alone there, and I walked far enough that the closest person was still very far from me, and there were no children around when he called. Before I got into the car, he saw a small boy getting into the car, but when I was inside, He was confused because he didn't see the boy and thought maybe the boy was lying on his back in the third row so he couldn't see it from the front. Then, when he asked me why the boy didn't speak anymore, because for the first few minutes he sometimes still heard laughter, and because I didn't answer, he thought the boy was asleep. I don't know if he was playing a prank on me or not, but he looked really scared. His hands were cold and shaking. It was a dark and stormy night when I saw someone at my friend's house who was never there. By U/King Nightingale. This happened 2 nights ago. I went over to a friend's house, and I live in Wisconsin, and for the past few days, we've had a lot of crazy thunderstorms and rain rolling through. And this night was the craziest it got. The roads were flooded, lightning and thunder constantly cracking in the sky. Driving over had me feeling a little bit nervous, and normally, I never feel worried about how I drive in storms, but it was extra windy and pouring rain. Anyway, I make it to my friend's apartment. Let's call him John. And as I get out of my car, there is a deafeningly loud thunder overhead, as if Thor had just landed in the backyard. I approach the door to the apartment, to which my buddy is already standing at the foot of the dark stairwell leading to his apartment. "Our power's out," he tells me. I walk in and go upstairs with him into their apartment. And as I enter the room, it's obviously pretty dark, but not pitch black. It was still 8 p.m. around this time, and some light was creeping in from their balcony sliding door. I made note that Patrick, another coworker who lives with my buddy, was sitting on the couch by this window, along with another silhouette of a person who I assumed was his brother, who had been staying with them for a little while. Both of them turned their heads toward me when I entered, but didn't say anything. I began feeling a nervous panic as I turned to put the beer that I had brought over in the fridge. I, for some reason, felt weird energy in the living room around the corner where Patrick and his brother were sitting. John said something like, "You can go into the living room. You don't have to hang back here." And I turned the corner, greeted Patrick, and was going to greet his brother, until I noticed that the other silhouette I saw was gone. Now it was just Patrick on the couch. I don't let this freak me out, and I wait a good 15 to 30 minutes before saying, "Weren't there 4 of us in here?" To which John and Patrick both said, "No." I then mentioned that I saw Patrick's brother sitting on the couch next to him, to which Patrick explains that his brother left 2 days ago. So, what the hell did I see turn its head to look at me enter? Why was it sitting next to Patrick? Was this just my mind filling in the blanks because I assumed his brother was over, and it was dark enough that my mind put an imaginary person next to Patrick? Does anybody have any theories? Missing piece to a special Kachina doll suddenly reappears in plain sight. By U/Scrolling My Life Away. My boyfriend and I moved into a new home at the beginning of the pandemic, around April 2020. Upon moving in, all the boxes were placed in the garage, and the only things in the house were the large pieces of furniture, like the sofa, coffee tables, beds, and a piano. The house had a wonderfully lit display case, and I decided to unpack the precious items box so that I could spend the evening placing each delicate item in the display case, then sit and enjoy it with my boyfriend. When I opened the box, I was devastated to see that my mother crow Kachina doll had lost half of her crow feathers. They were made of wood, and she had huge feather pieces that enveloped each side of her head, a right side and a left side. Worse yet, the missing crow feathers from the right side of her head weren't with the packaging, even though I had packed her as a whole piece. I found this supremely odd as I had packed the piece myself, and even if it had broken off during packing and the move, I would have expected to find the broken pieces with the packaging. But I couldn't find it anywhere. I told my boyfriend and we began looking in the box and on the floor for it. After intense searching, we were both completely at a loss to where it could have gone to. We looked all over the house, which was silly because it was completely empty except for our large pieces of furniture, and we found nothing. We checked the box it came in again, and nothing. It was absolutely nowhere to be found. During this time, we were both up and moving around, and neither of us ever found it. After a while, we gave up, sat on the couch, and lamented the loss. It was a gorgeous authentic Zuni piece representing the mother of creation. He had given it to me for my birthday and I cherished it. And we both took it as a bad sign that it had not only broken during the move, but that we couldn't even fix it because we couldn't find the missing piece anywhere. We had some whiskeys, talked about other things, and then went to bed. The next day that we enter the living room, we see the missing feather piece for Mother Crow placed in easy view on top of the armrest of the couch. And somehow, the next morning, it's suddenly just right there and absolutely impossible to miss. Neither one of us could believe it. There was no way it was there that night before, and neither one of us placed it there. The house was virtually empty, so it's not like it would have been hard to find. It seemed to literally appear out of nowhere the next day, and was in such a visible place that there's no way that we would have missed it when looking for it the night before. We talk about the strangeness to this day, and still don't really know what happened or how it got there. Strange Encounter by the River by U/Affectionate Kitchen 8. I live in a small city that's mostly covered in concrete, apart from a couple of patches of nature here and there. In summer of 2015, I've decided to have a picnic by myself. I found a perfect place nearby, and it's a big square of grass by a riverbank that also has a pond with frogs and fish. The meadow is surrounded by the river on one side, a street on the opposite side, and trees separating it from neighboring houses. There are a couple of trees and some bushes right by the river too. I chose a spot almost in the middle of the meadow. I didn't want to be close to the cars, houses, and I didn't want to fall into the overgrown river either. The picnic was going great. I had some music playing. It was very hot, so I took off my shirt to try and catch some breeze. I was located so that the river was to my right side and the road was to my left. After a while, I heard a rustle behind me. I didn't want to find out I was trespassing or bothering someone with my music. and I turned my head around to the left, and it was a 30-something heavy-set man, wearing white shorts and a blue t-shirt with a red and white logo. He was walking about 5 meters behind me, heading towards the river. So he disappeared behind me. I've decided to put my shirt back on in case he comes over to talk to me. I did so, and then I looked back to see where he was. But there was nobody there, other than a yellowish dog heading towards the river. At first, I didn't find it strange. I just got up because I didn't want to risk getting my face bitten by some dog. I started to pack up and noticed there was no man in sight. The nearest trees must have been at least 100 meters away. It was just a big, completely flat meadow. After packing up, I felt a little courageous and slightly approached the place where the dog went. It was trying to pull something large and heavy out of the river. I didn't see what it was because of the bushes, but I could see it struggling to pick it up and hear the heavy sounds the thing was making against the bank. I just went home afterwards, not frightened, but a little intrigued. It's just a little contribution for me. It could have been nothing, a hallucination caused by the hot weather, but I've never experienced anything like that before, or even afterwards. It was so vivid that I can still see the outfit he wore. The Candle and the Box by u/coffee_break37. So, this happened, and I don't know what to make of it. My fiancé and I were eating dinner, and he was recounting a TED Talk that he watched during a seminar today. As he was speaking, I have the most extreme déjà vu, but it was more than just a feeling. I knew exactly what he was going to say. He was telling the story of how people were presented with a candle and a box of tacks and matches on a table, and told to use these items to light the candle without it dripping on the table. As soon as he said the word candle and a box of tacks, my mind instantly showed me an image of the solution, because I remember him telling me the story before, and I said, "I know this story. You've told this to me before." He was adamant that he had not. I then told him that I remember him telling me the answer. Push the tack through the box to hang on the wall and placing the candle in the box. As soon as I said the answer, we were both staring at each other. He does not recall ever seeing this and states that he would remember because the story was really memorable. He has a fairly good memory and no other forgotten memories that we know of. His immediate thought is that it could be a memory he forgot. But even he doesn't fully believe this because his memory is fine. But the alternative is just too strange. I'm convinced that this is some strange glitch, but I wanted to post here and see if anyone has any thoughts. And maybe notable, we've had one other glitch. Last year, I heard him walk up to the door, and I thought that I heard him at the door, and I shouted because I was in the kitchen and it was completely quiet, so hearing him at the door startled me. Then, he runs in 10 seconds later and says, "Why did you scream? Are you okay?" But I explained to him that I screamed because I heard him at the door and it startled me. By his recount, he was walking up the stairs to the second flight of stairs when he heard me yell, and then he ran up the rest of the stairs. We live in an apartment with 2 sets of outside stairs. We still don't really know what happened then, but just attributed it to something that we cannot explain. Two outlets in the wall changed on their own by u/Rock is Rad. This happened yesterday. I'm a part-time college student that lives with my grandma, and her house is fairly old. It was built anywhere between the 50s and the 70s. Most of the outlets in the front section of the house are only two-prong outlets, a neutral and hot opening with no third opening. No ground opening, I think it's called. The back room for the house, which acts as the main living room, is an extension of the house that was built about 15 years ago or so. So those outlets on that side all have three-prong outlets. I've lived with her since 2019 and have always had an extension that connects three prongs to two-prong outlets on the plug for my laptop. Last night, I came home from work. I was going to use my laptop, but I noticed that the battery was low, so I went to plug it into the plug right by my bed with an extension. I noticed that the outlet now suddenly had three-prong openings. I was in shock and just stared and wondered if it had always been like that. But I'm near certain it hasn't, because why else would I go out of my way to look for an extension to plug my laptop into that outlet in the past? I even remember losing the extension earlier this year and being unable to plug my laptop in my room because all the outlets only had two-prong openings. I was in disbelief, so I go to my grandma's room to tell her and my mom. My mom was also shocked. She told me that she knows it was only two openings because when she came to bug me one day, she went to plug her phone in my bed and plugged it into my extension cord that had my 3-to-2-prong extension. It's chunky, so you can't miss it. We were talking about it for a little bit, but then went to the kitchen to eat. I wondered if the other outlet under the breakfast nook was still the same, so I went to check. I pulled the chair out and was frozen. The outlet that I knew for a fact had only two-prong openings had changed too. I felt like I was hyperventilating. I didn't know what was going on. I was freaking out and I told my mom to come look at it. And she was equally shocked. She said she tried to plug a big fan in there about 2 months ago, but couldn't because it only has two-prong openings. So she had to move a couch to plug the fan in. For the past 2 years, I have sat in the same chair at the breakfast nook and plugged my laptop in using the prong extension. I remember first moving in here and asking my aunt if she had one of the extensions that I could borrow, since I was unable to plug my laptop in. I asked my grandma if anyone had come by to change just 2 outlets. And no one has, of course. Like, for what purpose? I could barely sleep last night because I kept staring at the outlet by my bed, wondering what the hell had happened to both of them. Where Did the Other Chair Go? By u/Key2062. Last night, to celebrate the 4th of July, my husband and I watched the fireworks from a hotel room at a local casino. After the display, we went down to find some food, enjoyed our pho, then went to find seating somewhere outside to smoke our cigars to cap off the evening. Unlike Vegas, This casino only has one very small outdoor area with slot machines. This area leads to an outdoor space with 3 long benches. He stayed in an area with the slot machines, looking around while I walked outside to find a seat. There were people sitting at each of the benches, and one gentleman in a chair, talking on his phone placed in between one set of benches. I looked down the line to see if there were other chairs, but it was just that one. So, we settled for the opposite end of the nearest bench to share with another couple. We are sitting there chatting away, and he says, "I guess he's waiting on his friend to join him." Since we are sitting at the first set of benches and I'm facing him while we are talking, all of the other benches are to my back. So I turned around to see who he was talking about, and it was the guy in the chair. He's still on his phone, and there's an empty seat to the right of him. I thought, "That's odd. How did I miss that other seat?" And shrugged it off, assuming that I just didn't pay close enough attention the first time. I said, "I saw him when I came out and wondered why there aren't more chairs out here." And in that moment I realized it was the chair from the slot machine area. I guess someone just pulled them out of there. So, we continue on with our conversation about random things, and after a few minutes, he interrupts himself and says, "Where did the other chair go?" I turn around, and the guy is still sitting there on the phone, alone in the chair. But this time, there's no other chair, and I said, "Oh, wow, yeah, where did the other chair go?" We are looking around to see if he moved it and discuss was it possible somehow that someone came by and grabbed it and somehow we missed it. There wasn't enough time or space for that to happen and both of us miss it. But we just couldn't come up with another explanation. After a few minutes of us being completely weirded out about this dang missing chair, I go over to the guy and say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, but was there another chair here beside you?" He says no, and it's just this one. I look at him like, what the fuck? He wants to know what's going on, and I said that I'll tell him the story when he's off of FaceTime. Another few minutes go by and he gets up to leave and walks by us. We tell him the story, and he looks at us like we are nuts and points at our cigars, shakes his head, laughs, and then walks away. Car's Visors No Longer There by U/Radic18. I want to preface this by stating that while I enjoy reading spooky stories or watching unexplained videos, I firmly consider myself a skeptic that will occasionally indulge in the paranormal side of things purely out of fun. With that being said, my skepticism is the reason why I'm also making this post. It's a bit of a rant/venting because I cannot reasonably explain this experience. Last year, in the middle of summer, my girlfriend and I bought ourselves a new car. We fell in love with it at the dealer and all the other features it came with, despite it being a little pricey. Completely worth it. Months in, and we would still find ourselves gasping in excitement whenever we'd come across a feature or quirk that made us appreciate the car even more. One of these things was the little visor extensions. I'm not sure if there's a proper name for it, but you know how some visors have a little black slide that helps extend over more? Yeah, that thing. We came across it October 23, 2020. I know the exact date because that day, we drove out to pick up the new iPhone 12 Pro that had just come out. The color configuration that I wanted was sold out in the Apple store in my city, so I had to go pick it up a city over. Now, the drive itself isn't bad, about 40 minutes to and from, but traffic was heavy that day and we had to drive slowly on the way back against the sun. I pulled the visor down to block the sun, and when it didn't, I looked for the visor extension, and boom, problem solved. I probably did this rather dramatically, or something, because my girlfriend noticed and immediately did that little gasp and quickly once again mentioned how great this car was while pulling hers out too. Something so small and simple, but our previous car didn't have one, and the one she owned before she met me didn't either. So she flipped her shit at finally having one. Again, sometimes it's the small things in life. We drove home that day, and God knows how long it was before we were once again driving into the sun, but we did. Next time, I found my routine as being blessed by the sunlight. I pulled down the visor and quickly reached for the extension because it was once again not going to be enough. I paw at it for a bit, looking for the extension and trying to grip at it while my eyeballs are being cooked. But after a few seconds, I flip it back up and then down again. Nothing. I'm kinda baffled at it not being there and quickly let my girlfriend know and ask her to pull hers down to check. Nope, not on that one either. Okay, we're definitely questioning some things at this point, but we're fine. It must have been the other car we used to drive, right? We come home and check, but no, that car doesn't have it either. Even if it did, that was not the car that we had driven that day to pick up my new phone. There was no other car, no Uber, no rental, no nothing. It was our current white Lincoln SUV. It had a visor. It is by far the one glitch in the Matrix moment for us, and I still can't explain it. Every time a conversation about this topic comes up, I find myself frustrated at how I have to retell something that I just cannot understand. Part of me wishes it was something that only one of us had experienced, because then I'd be able to write it off as a false memory or dream. But having both of us experience this makes it more mind-blowing. Did my girlfriend and I walk into a parallel dimension watch boutique? By you/Goofball John McGee. This happened a year ago. My girlfriend and I were in the local mall for a quick errand, and we passed by this famous watch boutique here. They had a poster of the newest Seiko dive watch. This piqued my interest because not many stores stock Seiko here. So naturally, I asked my girlfriend if we could go in for 5 minutes, and we did. I tried a couple of watches on, but didn't like the collection so much, and the sales representative told me to check next week because they were adding new ranges as and when they get cleared by customs. She cited Corona and all of that. I agreed, and we walked out of the store. And that's not very uncommon because there were several social distancing guidelines for that mall, as well as the boutique itself has mid-high-end brands. Now, here's the kicker. We were near the mall 8 to 10 days later, and we decided to check if they had other models. But they vehemently denied that they ever carried Seiko. I felt like I was crazy. I said that there was a poster outside and everything, and the manager said that there may be a chance that it was another branch, but to his knowledge, the boutique itself did not stock Seiko, no matter the branch. Dumbfounded, I emailed their head office, and even they told me the same thing. My girlfriend and I spoke about it and we just couldn't explain it. What the hell did I try on? And where? I feel like this is gonna sound insane, but I've been thinking about this for 2 days now, and I feel like I have to post this to see if anyone has any possible explanation. 2 nights ago, me and my girlfriend were laying in bed while playing YouTube on the TV in our bedroom. I watch it while she sits on her phone or reads. I have the YouTube autoplay feature on, so when one video ends, it just immediately plays the next one. I was watching a ton of Nick Merck's videos that night. For those that don't know, Nick Merckx is a gaming streamer or YouTuber, so I ended up falling asleep while the videos are playing and the TV is on lower than half volume because it's late and pretty much just background noise, honestly. I don't know how long exactly I was asleep, but it couldn't have been long because my girlfriend was still awake reading when this happened. But as I'm asleep, I hear clear as day and extremely loud Nick Merckx himself go, "Wake up!" in the most stern, bone-chilling tone. The only way I've ever heard someone else say this in this way is in Spider-Man Far From Home when Mysterio and Spider-Man are fighting, and Mysterio goes, "It's time to wake up," to him, and that's the only thing I can compare it to. I jerk awake and was facing the TV, and I swear to God that for a split second, I saw Nick Merck's face in full screen, staring straight into the camera. And then, it immediately went back into gameplay with him talking to his teammates, and stuff like nothing was happening. I looked over to my girlfriend and she was staring at the TV with a shocked look on her face. I asked her, "Did you hear that?" And she said, "Yeah," and sounded scared. I picked up the remote and rewinded a full minute in the video, and we both sat and watched it through, and it didn't happen in the video. He never once screams "wake up," nor does he go full face cam in the video. He only ever does full face cam in the intros, and he hasn't even been doing intros lately, so there's literally no full face cam at all in this video. I have no idea what happened. Can someone please explain this? I would also like to address a couple of things here. Number 1, did I get confirmation the next day from my girlfriend or just when I woke up? Well, after this happened, I didn't fall asleep for a while and we stayed up together freaked out for about an hour and a half, talking about what the hell just happened. As well as the next night, we both said we should just keep the TV off and going to bed. So yes, she definitely experienced it, and it was confirmed a lot that night, as well as the next day. Number 2, is it possible it was an ad? No, I have YouTube Red, specifically because I watch YouTube on my TV every night, and the ads, especially the mid-rolls, are extremely annoying. So, I never get ads on YouTube. Number 3, could someone have cast onto the TV with their phone and etc.? If it's possible to cast onto an Amazon Fire Stick, then possibly. But I have now talked to everyone that lives in my house since this happened about this experience, and all of them said that they don't cast to TVs ever. So, if it did happen, it would have had been a random person like a neighbor. Although, my neighbors are far away as we live in the wooded area where the houses are really spread out. I'm not saying it's 100% impossible, but given all the variables I have listed and the fact that it was Nick Merckx himself yelling from the TV, I feel like the chances of this are just extremely slim. Number 4. Did my girlfriend see it? I have asked her if she saw it, and she says she didn't. But I feel like I need to emphasize some details here because I wrote this post very poorly before because I was on mobile, and like I said, I didn't think it would blow up at all, so I didn't put much effort in. When I said it was loud when he yelled, I mean it was loud, as if my soundbar had gone up to the max volume and then immediately back down to below half volume. Also, no, it was not me who yelled it in my sleep. Me and my girlfriend have talked about this a lot, as I said previously, and she knows it was the TV. She knows what Nick Merckx sounds like, and she said when it happened, she instantly thought it was the TV as well, and that there was no way that it was me. And number 5. Do I have any other weird stuff happen around my house? Not a lot, honestly. My sister watched her closet doorknob twist back and forth once, and when she finally opened the door, there was no one in there. I feel like sometimes I hear someone whisper in my ear, but I never really care because I feel like everyone has stories about, I swear, someone just said my name. So I kind of blow it off. And the only big thing really is I was eating dinner with my family at the kitchen table. And from where my chair is, I can see straight ahead of me through a giant window that looks out to our backyard that is pretty big. And I swear that I saw a white man in a white shirt and blue jeans walk through our backyard, walk behind a tree, and then was just gone. I went, "Who the hell is that?" And everyone looked out of the window, and my dad went, "Oh shit," and ran and grabbed his gun while we all kept watching the tree that he went behind. When he went outside and looked, there was no one there. When he came back in, I asked him why he reacted like that because he was a very chill person who never reacts about stuff. And he responded with, "I saw him too. He went behind the tree, right?" I said yes. And he just looked spooked and didn't say anything else about it. I believe I just jumped into something, or out of something, by u/Anda_Gonda. Okay, this happened like 5 minutes ago, and I am writing this immediately after. I live in a 3-story house, and it's Diwali time here in India, and we have decorated our house with lights and lanterns. It's almost 1:45, so I went downstairs to shut down all the lights in the parking area. I had a little chat with the neighbor too. Then I put up my headphones while having a quiet walk. It's the same playlist which I listen to every day, so nothing out of the ordinary till now. Now, as I have my last drag, the song almost ends and I walk back to the switchboard to turn off all the lights in the parking. As I turn them off one by one, coming to the last switch, some teeny tiny insect hits me in the head. It felt like a flick on my forehead. And my immediate response, almost sort of a reflex action, is that I swat my forehead, catch the insect, and for a moment there, I had closed my eyes. 3 things happen here. I'm pretty sure that I had the bug or whatever hit my head in between my fingers. Second, the song changed to the next song on the playlist. Third, all the lights went out. Or, that's what my brain records clearly as I am typing these words. The second my eyes opened somehow, the first song which was playing started over again. Come on, dude. You must have accidentally hit the previous arrow, or it must be on repeat. No, I never put on repeat on my Spotify, and also, my phone was sitting in the stairs in a secluded window, and I have no family members with me at this moment of time. And second, the bug or whatever it was that I clearly caught wasn't there anymore in my palm or fingers. But dude, you just said you turned off all the light switches. How are you sure it didn't escape or jump off or something? Well, this brings me to my next item. Third, all the switches were turned on. I took a second to contemplate and register all my actions and responses, and just continued as usual. I don't know if I should be swearing to God on this, but yeah, believe it or not, this just happened. My Neighborhood is Really Weird by u/Scattle92. So, I moved here around 7 months ago, and my house is in a square with 8 other houses, all facing towards a small patch of grass at the front. The first day we got the keys, we met our next-door neighbor, Janet. She was standing outside her front door when we walked up to the house, almost like she was waiting for us. I see Janet a lot and speak with her often, and I'm sure that she's a real person. And I have even met her adult daughter, and I have seen Janet around the local area. A few days after moving in, a courier knocked and asked if I would take in a parcel for the people on the other side of the square. I thought it was strange that he had knocked on my door rather than someone closer, but I obliged. A man came a few hours later and asked if I had a package for their house. And I gave him the package, and the man introduced himself as Mark. And I haven't seen him since that day. Other than those already discussed, I have never seen another person on this square, even my next-door neighbor on the other side. I have heard noises from them, but I have never physically seen them. I'm at home 6 days per week, and my husband is home the other day, and neither of us has ever seen anyone. I can see all their front doors from my house, and a week ago, I was chatting with Janet. I asked her how long she lived here, and she said 24 years. This is definitely true because I have at least one mutual acquaintance with her, and they have verified this. I asked her if she knew any of her neighbors, and she said that she didn't know any of the neighbors at all. Janet is a very friendly and warm person, and she's very chatty, so it doesn't make sense for her not to know any one of our neighbors, at least casually. You might be thinking that all the other houses are empty, but this is not the case. The hedges at the front of the houses are all well maintained, the windows are clean, and the flower beds are looked after. Then, yesterday, I saw a man on the green. He was in the middle of the green carrying a laptop bag. I watched him walk into one of the houses, but then an hour later I saw him again, still carrying a laptop bag, and I saw him in the middle of the green and watched them into the same house. It really felt like a glitch. It was the same exact thing twice. Tonight will be Halloween. I was hoping to take my kids around the square trick-or-treating and also use this way to see if any of my neighbors exist. Not one house has a pumpkin or any decorations, which means that it would be rude to knock on the doors tonight. And I'm honestly starting to feel crazy. Real story, maybe not a glitch, but still gives me goosebumps. By u/Deku Dynamite. I walked into my best friend's house in 2001, 8th grade. She was getting ready in the bathroom, and I was chatting her up. I took a few steps into the hallway to look into the living room, because I thought that I heard her mom or something. But there I see a young woman sitting on the couch, and I knew her. Riley. She lived in a different state, did drugs with my cousin, but had no relation to my best friend or her family. My brain wouldn't compute. I pull my best friend into the hallway and point, and she sees her too. I said, "I know her. Her name is Riley." I didn't mention the drugs because I'm sure this chick can hear me. Riley waves and smiles, and she embodies mischief. My best friend confirms that nope, she's never seen her before, and why the hell is she on the couch? My friend and I disappear in the opposite direction, looking for her mom. Why didn't we approach Riley instead? Riley was creepy. When she looked at you, it was like she wanted to eat you or devour your soul. Terrifying. It might have been the drugs. We find her mom outside, and she tells us, "She's having problems at home, and I'm not telling you anything more. You girls be nice. Make her feel at home." Riley stays there for a month or two, and my best friend's mom sometimes house victims of abuse through a nonprofit. Riley was their newest safe haven. She comes, she leaves, and she was creepy. Fast forward 10-ish years, my best friend and I go to visit my cousin, and guess who we see? Creepy McCreepy, Riley. Riley says that she hasn't seen me since I was a small child. I give her a puzzled look. Maybe she wants to keep the home abuse a secret? Forget it all. She acts like she has never met my best friend. Okay, so maybe nobody in her life knows about this trip to a safe house for a month. Gotcha, we're all clued in. Later, Riley and I end up alone on the outdoor deck. She says something like, "I can't believe I haven't seen you since you were what, 5 years old?" And a few other curiosities. I didn't intend to comment on anything, but like word vomit, it came out. "Do you really not remember seeing me?" After explaining everything, the safe house, her month's stay, and etc. During those months, we talked about my cousin, their drug use, her family, and she looks effing baffled. I told her that if she didn't believe me, we could grab my best friend and get her side of it. She agrees, and my best friend comes out. Riley is now so perplexed that she's not even talking. Then, it's denial. She says she might have a doppelganger or twin. We say, "No, you talked about my cousin, your home, nothing was different." Now, we're getting concerned we're going to bring up repressed memories or shit. And I'm trying to leave it alone. change the subject. Nope. Dog meat bone. She starts asking us what year this was, what month, says she can prove that it wasn't her. Riley calls my cousin out, asks him what grade they were in when they went to Yellowstone for 2 weeks. Through photos and 3 hours of sleuthing. Indeed, Riley was in Yellowstone with my cousin the same time that she was at the safe house. The information suggests it was around July 20-ish. And Riley feels vindicated, like, "See? I told you it wasn't me." And my best friend and I are beyond horrified. There are only 3 options. We got the dates wrong, or drugs riddled this chick's brain, or she really wanted to keep it a secret and we just effed it up big time. A few months later, my best friend calls me for our nightly chats and says something like, "I talked to my mom and she remembers Riley. She remembers that she was weird and she was the most stressful safe haven that they've ever had. They called her Sticky Fingers." My best friend asked about the dates her mom thought she stayed with us. It was the same time frame as Riley's Yellowstone trip with my cousin, middle of July to middle of August. Years passed and we left it alone. Obviously, we had gotten dates wrong. Well, something, fine. I'm pragmatic, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. Riley shoots me a Facebook message, which is our first conversation ever. She says, "Look what I found." She and my cousin had a photo of them at Cook City entrance with a firefighter who had been battling a fire for a week or so that summer. The date on the photo was July 31st of 2001, middle of their trip to Yellowstone. My bestie's birthday is August 2nd, and Riley was there for that party. She sat in the kitchen and she ate some cake. Impossible. I still don't know what happened, and I've completely given up on trying to figure it out. But still a good story, and I thought that I would share. A handful and a sprinkle of weeks ago, I was cutting bell peppers for dinner. My 12-year-old asked if he could plant the seeds because the gardens were empty awaiting fall planting. I gave permission for him to use the bed on the right and watched him plant them right away. I thought about how bell peppers weren't part of my plan, but it's okay. I'm tardy on planting anyway. So the weeks pass by and the seeds grow. Cool. Last week, I finally get around to ordering the seeds for the fall planting. But it's weird. I didn't think bell peppers were growing on a vine. A vine is slowly taking over the right and left beds. It has curly tendrils that reach to grab onto things. It has yellow flowers, and I'm very confused. Then last night, I went to tell the 12-year-old to go look at his bell peppers because there might be some fruit by now. We go together and discover melons. What? There are cantaloupes growing in my garden. We don't throw garden seeds there willy-nilly, and I carefully plan the beds. I watched him plant the bell peppers, and we don't even buy cantaloupes more than once or twice a year, and I usually buy them already cut. There's enough plants that it couldn't have been an accident. Right where he planted at the bell pepper seeds, moments after I cut them open, are melons. So, I have no idea. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.